Mythbusters. I'm Dr. Carolyn George of Vita Integrative Medicine, and this is Leslie Harrington, Transformational Coach. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us again tonight. Tonight our topic is fasting, and specifically intermittent fasting. So if you have any questions, feel free to jump on in and shout out your questions. If you've had any experience with any kind of fasting, also feel free to share that information, and we can talk about the pros and cons of whichever type of fasting you're most interested in.
So lots of different types of fasting, and there's a lot of hype around fasting. So a lot of people might have heard about it, but aren't really sure what it means. What is intermittent? Are there different definitions of that? There's benefits to all different types of fasting, and then it might not be right for everybody. So we're going to really kind of dig in a little bit deep onto some of the more impact, the conditions that it can be impactful for, and then how it can just generally support a good nutrition plan and diet and exercise program.
Right. So first, just a little bit about what is fasting, because everybody's got a different way of thinking about it. Fasting is just not eating, and typically we think about not eating for about 8 hours, which is what you're going to do before you go for fasting labs, right? Everybody's heard about fasting labs. But there are other ways of fasting. So you can fast, you can talk about a water fast. So there's different ways of fasting, different things that you can actually still take in even though you're fasting. And of course there's different lengths of time that you can fast. And so some of the interest in fasting came out of some studies that they did on blue zones. So blue zones were something that were still are studied, looking at places that people have called blue zones, where people live longer, and trying to figure out what it is that they do that makes them so different from the rest of us. Because some of these places, one of them is in California, right? Loma Linda. So it doesn't have to be all the way across the world, but there are little pockets around the world where people live well into their hundreds, very commonly healthy. They're not in a nursing home, they're not demented, they're out there working and contributing. And so what is this about what they do that makes a difference? And one of the things that they do is they all fast.
I think it's important too to distinguish fasting from like starvation. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think fasting, I'm not eating, that's starving, and how do you, even like we talk about breakfast, right? The word breakfast is breaking your fast.
Correct.
So that doesn't mean that it has to be at a certain time of day. It's breaking a fast. So just to be clear on that, so people don't get confused as to what the purpose of this whole show is about.
Right. We don't want you to starve, right? Some people will use this for weight reduction, but that's not actually some of its major benefits. There's a lot of other benefits for some groups of people that we can see. So not necessarily for everybody. But that fasting piece that they saw when they did the blue zones, so there's some groups that spiritually will fast. Ramadan, you're going to fast for a month, but that means that you're still eating, right? You just don't eat during certain times. You don't eat during the daylight times, you eat in the evening. Other groups fast at certain times of the year, for example, Lent. Other groups fast a certain day of the week. So there's a lot of different ways to fast that we've identified when we look at these different groups. And then they have a whole bunch of different benefits. So if anybody can kind of give me a thumbs up if anybody has done any fasting of any sort.
Who's familiar with some of these different methods?
Yeah, let's see. Who?
I'm thinking there's going to be a couple here.
I bet you there are. So we've got Ellen, we've got Sally, we've got Leda. Let's see who else is in there.
Up there to see who's up top there.
So give me a thumbs up if you've ever done any kind of fasting.
Okay, Leda's done it.
Yeah.
And what type did you do? Leda?
Yeah, if you can just put in the comments the type of fasting that you did and how long you did it for. And maybe whether you felt it was beneficial or not. So intermittent fasting is one way of fasting, and that's where you eat for a certain number of hours and you don't eat for the other hours. And so you can do it where you're not eating. Generally you want to, in a true intermittent fast, you want to try to not eat for about 16 hours, 14 to 16 hours. And so you kind of take the old adage that breakfast is your best meal of the day, and you shift it a little bit. Instead of having that early in the morning, you eat maybe around...
break your fast a little bit later.
You break your fast later, so around 10 or 11 o'clock, and then you eat between then and say 6 or 7. That would be your last meal, and then you don't eat from 6 or 7 until 11 or sometimes 12, a little bit later.
Yeah.
So it can be flexible, and it doesn't have to be every day. So just the fact that you're getting some calorie restriction, because you naturally will, unless you all of a sudden try to stuff everything that you would eat in those 24 hours into that 8-hour little window of eating.
Which is actually really important to note, because if you're doing this and it's not specific for weight loss, it's really important that you still maintain your calories and that you are not taking in too little.
Right.
Especially a lot of athletes do this, and
Yes.
that it is critical for them to still make sure that they're getting the right nutrients. So you're eating the right fats, and you're eating, your body is, it goes hand in hand with the potential for being more of a fat burner than a sugar burner.
Right.
And when you're going for that extended period, those last probably 4 hours is when your body's really starting to tap into the fat stores, because it's kind of gone through the energy available to you, in your regular bloodstream or in your outer cells. So your that great period of time is in that last few hours.
Right. And so just kind of dive into that a little deeper, when you're eating, your body is breaking the food down and making sugar, blood sugar. So your body is going to use that blood sugar for all of its caloric, all of its energy requirements. But as you stop eating and you have it eaten now for 8 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, your body then has to tap into a different fuel source. So it uses fats, and it creates ketones, which can give you certain benefits for some people and negative for other people. But that's really the key for those people that are interested in this for weight loss, is that you want to tap into that fat burning rather than sugar burning. And if you're eating frequently every few hours, you're just burning sugar, you're never burning fat.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually goes right hand in hand too. So if you imagine you're eating every few hours, every time that you're putting food in your body, most often, unless it's a pure fat base, proteins and carbs are they're gonna stimulate an insulin response. Mm-hmm. And when your insulin is present, your body goes into fat storage mode. It's basically like, first come, first serve, right? So the body is going to use what's in your bloodstream before it starts to tap into your cellular stores.
Always, right.
So insulin, if you're eating constantly and you've constantly got insulin present in your bloodstream, you're very rarely in that period of time in any type of, you're in fat storage the whole time. So you're not burning from fat. And when you're in these longer periods and your insulin is really not, coming out, and you're able to just burn what's in your stores, that's kind of the premise of why you see improvements in insulin levels. You might see improvements for people with type 2 diabetes. It allows the body to utilize some of that stored fuel that they're not otherwise using.
Burning, right. And so kind of diving into that a little bit deeper. So if you are now burning fat, not sugar, your body kind of goes into a mode where it's a little concerned about where it's going to get its next calories. And so what it starts to do is shut down areas that don't absolutely need it. And it starts to clean house. And the way it cleans house is it looks for the weaker cells. And those weaker cells are not given energy. And the body has this thing called autophagy. Auto means self, and phagy means eat. So it starts to eat itself. It eats the weaker cells. So weaker cells can be cancer cells. They can be sick cells, so ones that you don't really want to be supporting. So your body does this nice house cleaning when you're not eating. It's got the energy to do it, and it's kind of cleaning it out and saying, okay, you're too weak. This is survival of the fittest. We don't need you. We don't need you. And it cleans that house.
Yeah, and we're probably, when you have a big meal, you have 80% of your energy is in your digestion.
Yes.
So if we're spending most of our day breaking down food and digesting and just trying to keep up standing up without sweeping out your gut, your body doesn't have energy to do, like Dr. George is saying, to do some of the more important things, some of the things that we need at the cellular level. And that's why it is very popular for cancers to hear a lot about fasting, is it really frees up those cells and to be able to do a whole different job, because it's not trapped in other areas of your body. If your liver's taxed, you're using a lot of energy to help your liver.
Detox.
Yeah. So each organ, there's a tremendous amount of energy that it takes just to function as a human being. Even if you're in optimal condition, your body uses a lot of energy just to get through a day. So that it's really interesting and critical to have that cellular
Right.
fuel.
We need to be doing that house cleaning, and at the same time that your body is kind of cleaning house, it's also then sending more of its energy to your immune system. So it actually boosts your immune system and lets it do that surveillance even better. Kind of goes around and, what's weak, what don't we need, let's get rid of that. And in the efforts of that, there's also some hormonal shifts that go on with other hormones, potentially growth hormone and possibly some leptin. There's some other things that aren't fully kind of tweaked out, but we do see something that's really interesting called telomere growth. So your telomeres are just the little nubbins of your DNA, and every time your DNA gets copied, those little nubbins get smaller and smaller and smaller. They get kind of frayed on the ends. And so after it's been copied hundreds of times, they can get pretty frayed. But when you do this intermittent fasting, and they see this in mice, actually the best studies have been done in mice and some in monkeys, and then a few in humans, but not as many. But in the mice population, this one really cool study took mice, and from the time that they were several months in till they were weaned, they then gave them caloric restriction in the terms of intermittent fasting. And they did this to the end of their lifespan. And then they looked at the group that they did the caloric restriction to, and then the group that they just let eat as much as they wanted. And there was actually a 20% increase in lifespan in that group that had the caloric restriction. And when they looked at their telomeres, they were a little bit longer. The ones that were still around, the telomeres were longer. So it can add benefit.
Yeah, so that's how powerful it is at the cellular level.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what when you hear about it being anti-aging, that's what they're talking about. And they did a similar study in monkeys, in rhesus monkeys, and found similar, I don't know the exact, I can't remember the exact numbers of the increase in lifespan, but it was there. And we also see this in the middle of this. Where were we talking about?
Telomeres.
Yeah,
so,
telomeres.
Yeah, telomere length, I like to think of like a shoelace.
Yeah.
You know when you're in high school and your shoelace would start to fray and then you'd cut it and like put tape around it?
Right?
Right, so the length of it as you get older, in theory, not in theory, in reality, the telomeres shorten in length. And it's actually a very predictive indicator of cellular age, right? So, yeah, you can get it tested too. I don't know that I recommend it.
Yeah, you have to be willing to deal with the results.
Your cellular age.
And what you might have to do to improve that too. So we're looking at the anti-aging piece, or the increasing the telomere. That has potential to help you. It has potential with weight. And then what other things?
Brain boosting.
Brain boosting, yes, exactly. So when we look at studies that are doing this intermittent fasting, actually it can increase the neuroplasticity of your brain, and it can increase that BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. So that's kind of a cool thing. And on top of that, then if you're getting more ketotic, we know that when people are making more ketones, that tends to be a good fuel for the brain, and so you tend to think sharper, be more focused. Obviously not until you're starving. We want to have some fuel on board, but in that period where you're ketotic but not off the edge starving, then you're doing really well.
Yeah, and actually let's talk about how you can really accomplish this. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, 16 hours, what would I do? For me, some people might just be good having 12 hours between the time that they go to bed and the time they wake up. That's actually a nice period for you to give your body and your digestion a break. The 16-8, you can work up to that, and it's some people do 2 days on, 1 day off. There's so many different varieties and different benefits for how you would do these different types of fasts.
And we haven't studied it enough to know exactly what's the best. So what I say is try it, kind of play with it and see what works best for you, because there are no big studies that say 2 days a week is what you have to do, or every day a week is what you have to do.
Yeah, you have to listen to your body.
Right.
And then obviously if you have a condition, you would see your doctor and make sure that you want to do it under supervision if you're doing any type of extended fast. And then we talked earlier on, what does an extended fast look like? Are you solely drinking water? Are you some people have heard of bulletproof coffee. The premise of bulletproof is that you're putting in the oils and the pure fats that aren't going to really initiate that insulin response.
Right.
So you're still in that fasted state for the purposes of not having insulin present. So some people do fat fast, so they do integrate some fats. The other one would be the juicing, which a juice fast is going to have its own risk in that there are different layers of detox.
Right.
So you want to make sure that there's some other things happening when you're doing a juice fast, like the fiber component, your amino acids, things like that.
So just to kind of speak on the juice fast for a minute, so some people will just drink juice throughout the day and they won't eat any solid food. And if you're juicing where you're extracting the fiber, then you're not reaping all the benefits of that, those vegetables and fruits that you're eating. And you also want to watch how many fruits to how many vegetables you're having. Some people, their juice fast is 5 fruits and 1 vegetable, and that's going to be a sugar load that's not going to get you into any kind of ketonic state. So you want to watch that. And obviously people that are like a type 1 diabetic, this might not be for you, because depending on how well your sugars are controlled, you may not be able to judge adequately how much insulin you should be taking. So type 1 diabetics are somebody that I don't always suggest do any kind of intermittent fasting. Pregnant mothers or anybody who's trying to get pregnant, I would not suggest this. And anybody who's not well, who's lightheaded, who might faint.
Adrenals. I've seen a little bit of hormone imbalances not do well with these.
Right.
Depending, again on you.
So always check with your primary care physician or your functional medicine doctor to make sure that this is something that you can do. But if it is, then you consider the water fast, just having water for the period that you're talking about, and then doing food on the other hours, or just drinking some juice during that. But again, we're going to watch that juice because there's a lot of sugar in it. And anytime you're fasting, you have to understand that to detoxify your body, when your body is eating, it's taking all those good nutrients that you're bringing in, and it's using them to build muscle, to build enzymes, to build neurotransmitters, to build skin, and to repair, and your immunoglobulins, etc. So there's going to be some of these free radicals that are created through metabolism, and those go through 2 steps. Step 1 of detox doesn't need really a lot, you don't need to be eating to do that, but in step 2 you do need the benefits of the sulfur from different vegetables, of methyl groups from different foods. You do need food in step 2 of detox. So if you're trying to detox, you actually do need to eat while you're detoxing, a little bit at least.
Okay.
So you're not going to use the intermittent fasting so much for detoxing. That's a separate function. So
yeah,
I don't want to confuse anybody.
So the different types, what else did we have on there? We had a couple pinpoints.
Yeah, so some of the other benefits of this, oxidative stress. So as I was just speaking about, when you're detoxing, your liver is really busy. It's very energy consuming to detox your body. And so when you're not eating, you're giving your liver a little bit of a break. It's not going to detox quite as actively because it's not getting so much stuff in that it has to process. And so you are given all that energy that your liver is not using for that, and you have less oxidative stress. So it really is useful for that in terms of kind of bringing down inflammation. So that's another thing that helps with inflammation.
Some people do also, there's bone broth fast, like there's all kinds, it's getting a little trendy.
Mm-hmm.
So just again, remembering there's one that's actually newer that you just had a wonderful experience with, is the fasting mimicking.
Yes.
So in that you could probably elaborate a little more than me, but it's going to be more calorie restrictive on certain days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then having a little bit more of a rhythm, so.
Right, so with the fasting mimicking diet, so you're still eating, but much less, it's very calorie restricted, and you do that 5 days. They suggest 5 days a month or every other month is what the research is starting to suggest. I'm not sure everybody's ready for that. I'm not sure that that's ready for prime time, but I did 5 days of this intermittent fasting where really I just had 2 soups a day and some other high-fat foods like olives and now I'm blanking. Olives.
I just remember the soups.
Oh, and some nuts. Yeah. Anyways, it was very limited, so you weren't getting a lot, and most of it was liquid.
Yeah, and that's not something you'd want to do extended period of time. It's really important to make sure that anytime you're going calorie deficit, you're almost better off fasting than you are to just have not enough calories all the time.
Right.
Because your body can't handle that. It won't be able to function properly, and your entire metabolic system's going to slow down to try to compensate.
Yeah.
So Kristen asks, is it's best to eat a healthy fat and protein when you break your fast, first meal of the day? And my answer to that would be it depends on your goals. your insulin is very sensitive after you're breaking a fast. So your body, I like to say it's almost like somebody shining a big flashlight in your face when you wake up in the morning. You're going to respond very dramatically versus if they were shining a light while you're sitting on the beach and the sun's shining. Right. Your body's not going to be like, oh my gosh. So in the morning, your insulin's very sensitive. So if you're eating a high carb meal the minute you wake up in, standard American diet, you're having your dessert for breakfast, your bagel or your
crepes,
oatmeal and fruits and whipped cream
with maple syrup.
Yeah, so those are going to be things that are going to like dramatically waken your insulin, and it's not just going to put you in fat storage, it's going to put you in fat storage for an extended period of time, because now you've got much more insulin than your body really necessarily would have needed had you gone with a protein and a fat and a little more less carb type of morning. So if your goal is fat loss, you don't want to be eating carb heavy first thing in the morning.
Right. Yeah. So you're correct, Kristen. That's long answer, but yes.
And she says she's having amazing results from that. So she's moved her carbs to later in the day, which is a little bit backwards from what we've all been conditioned to believe, because we think, we eat carbs in the morning and then we burn all day. And it's actually the opposite. It's not so much about what you're putting out through the day. It still matters what you're burning in general. Right. So having a little bit, obviously the good healthy carbs and your non-starchy vegetables, and those are all carbs, later in the day is going to be more effective if your goal is to be losing weight.
Right. Sounds good. So let's see, what other questions did we have here?
We've got some chit chat going on.
Yeah, and just trying to make sure I'm getting to all the questions.
I know I can't go all the way up.
Yeah, let's see here.
They're in here better. Let's see if we can scroll down here. Okay. Wait. So Kristen, Marianne.
What was grocery shopping?
Sorry, I'm putting my finger across here. Let me try to get this way.
Okay.
All right, so any other questions? I know Ellen had said that she did the 16-8. She's been doing for a few months, and I can witness that Ellen's having wonderful results.
She's having great results, yes.
And then what did Lita say, from 5 till 8 a.m.? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So you're doing about 13 hours.
Yeah.
Which is, actually, no, that's 15, right? 5 to 5, 12, 13, 14, 15. Perfect, yeah. So she's almost at that 16-8, and, that's great. How do you feel like you're seeing results from that?
So, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in, and then we can talk about that. I just wanted to, we got through pretty much everything I wanted to say. I think we talked quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the increase in the human growth hormone. That was one other thing too.
Right, so that's actually some of the hormones that I was referring to. Human growth hormone, insulin, leptin, and ghrelin are all affected by the intermittent fasting.
Yeah, so your leptin is the hormone that tells your body that you're full and you're satiated, and your ghrelin is your hunger hormone. So that's the one that's like, if you're constantly hungry, your leptin and your ghrelin are not probably talking to each other properly.
Right.
So with that improvement too, just in the brain health and some of the other things that we talked about, but those are some critical hormones that are impacting your hunger levels, and then of course human growth hormone is really important for weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
So also anti-aging.
Right, also anti-aging, and the inflammatory piece is also really key. We don't sometimes give that enough credit, but when you're eating less of the foods and then you're having less of the detox, you've got less oxidative stress, and your body is able to kind of diminish that inflammatory response, and of course you're getting a lot less sugar.
And that's going a little bit along with the housekeeping.
Yeah,
so when it's doing housekeeping.
Right. So we want that good housekeeping in your body. So I'm just trying to look back here to see what other questions we have.
So who's going to try some sort of fasting as a result of
it's okay to do if you have thyroid issues.
Okay.
Yes, so it can be. It depends on a few things. If you're in the middle of a Graves' burst of too much thyroid, then you don't want to do this. But if you're pretty stable with your thyroid disease, you don't have to be optimal, but you can be at least stabilized, then yeah, it can be a great thing to do.
It can actually enhance your metabolism a little bit.
Absolutely.
Melanie says she's been discussing it, and her doctor actually recommended it to her for weight loss.
Great.
That's awesome. It's being talked about a little more in the mainstream.
Right.
Definitely a lot of press about it. I see it all over, the news articles and stuff and some of the nutrition. And we heard a tremendous amount about fasting in general at, the brain conference,
right.
and, the stuff to do with autoimmunity. It came up there. So it's a really powerful topic, and I think if people could wrap their minds around it, we've become such a society that's conditioned to eat all the time. It's like, I don't even think a lot of people really recognize hunger anymore, because we went through a phase where it was insisted that you have to eat every few hours to keep your blood sugar stable and things like that. And when you're eating the right foods, understand your blood should not be doing this major roller coaster anyway. And when you're looking for stability, it doesn't take a donut to fix a low blood sugar. It might take, a carrot. So, just understanding
or some
that.
nuts, right? Some almonds and some avocado and all those.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good to space your meals apart. So even if you're not doing these long periods of fast, giving yourself time from breakfast to lunch to allow your body to have some energy, like go digest, and then give yourself 4 hours. When's the last time you gave yourself a 4-hour window between a meal because you're used to throwing in that snack? Not to say that snacking's not bad if it's right for you, and you do have, again, these are things that you have to tap into and see what works for you.
Right.
But
individual.
Sometimes it helps to reset your leptin a little bit and kind of remind yourself that you might not be as hungry as you think you are. So, other questions, guys? We love it. This was a topic that was requested, and again, we love to have requests. So, anybody have any recommendations for next week? Feel free.
And actually, next week I think we might be talking. Yes. Yeah, we might be talking actually about CBD oils.
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks? Oh,
yes.
okay.
Oh, CBD. Yes. Hot topic.
Hot
CBD.
topics. Yeah.
Another one.
So stay tuned. We're going to start to fill you in on all the good stuff with CBD and how it's different from THC and some of those nuances.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, everybody, for dropping in. We really appreciate it. And as always, if you feel that this might be something that's helpful to anybody that you know, friends or family, please feel free to share it. The more you share it, the more we get the good word out about things that people can do to empower themselves.
Mythbusters.
All these mythbusters, exactly. And sometimes it's not myth busting. It's like saying, "Oh, these are great things," but all having to do with things that you can do to empower you to take control of your health. That's what we're all
Awesome.
about.
We've got one more quick question here from Christy. Joined late. I've been doing intermittent fasting in conjunction with Weight Watchers, and it's helping me to be successful. Fast for at least 12 to 14 hours from the last meal to morning meal. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you must feel great when you get up in the morning. I know when I have that 12-hour solid, it's it actually becomes really easy to kind
Because
of
you
just,
feel so much better.
when you're hungry, you're hungry. It's not, I have a lot of people that, I just don't like breakfast. And when I say to them, that's okay, they're like shocked, it's okay. You don't have to wake up and be starving. It's not what we used to think it was.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks so much. If you have any other questions, feel free to write them down and we'll try to respond. And in the meantime, have yourself a fabulous week and we'll see you next Monday.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.